is a September 12th edition of the Horse Racing Happy Hour live at the paddock at Churchill Downs. I'm Louie Rabeau, hanging out tonight with our friend from the Daily Racing Form. His name is Dan Illman. He is in a much more cultured part of the world, joining us from New York City, of course. Dan, you coastal elite, you get to be part of our inaugural séjour, if you will. I'm using the word séjour on purpose. On the Sporting Tribune feed as well. So say hello to everyone in San Diego, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas. How about that?
Do I have to?
No, you don't. No, of course not.
Hello, everybody. Again, it's an honor to be here. Debut edition. Very excited. On site at Churchill Downs, under the Twin Spires, in the paddock. So many legendary moments at Churchill Downs and so many more yet to come.
Well, there you go. A little track they call Churchill Downs here, hanging out outside a $250 million paddock. Nothing wrong with any of that, Dan. Wanted to get your thoughts on a couple of things, but of course, we bring Dan in whenever this part of the season hits. We'll start with this question, Dan. More likely that the Derby winner runs in the Iroquois or runs in any of the maiden races, the 2-year-old maiden races on Saturday?
What a question. You know something? I'm a gambler. I'm going to say maiden race.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
A lot of times, Louie, in these stakes races, they're precocious. They're early. These are horses. Many of them right now, they're going to be separated. Men, boys, router, sprinter. This 1-turn mile in the Iroquois, Pocahontas. I'm telling you, a lot of these horses are stretching out for the first time. They're all speedballs. They're going to be caught out, I think, by this distance. So half of them are likely to be off the Derby trail after this race. You might get 2 or 3 that might move on to the next one, the Kentucky Jockey Club, and then perhaps down the road. But these maidens, you might not see a maiden winner in the Kentucky Derby, but you might see a good fast closing third or a fast closing second or a fast closing fourth. Those are the ones to watch.
That's exactly right. We've had a couple of 2-year-old maidens win here tonight that I think are worth watching already. So we'll get into all of that as we go along. I did want to pick your brain a little bit because Breeders' Cup, we're only 2 months out. I'm sure I'll be running into you in San Diego. This is how the world works. We have Kentucky Downs here, Dan, and I don't know if you're aware of the field near Tennessee where we run races 7 days a year.
I'm aware.
Okay, and you have to hear about it over and over again because of the purses and all these kinds of things. Kentucky horses coming out of Kentucky Downs, 0 for 53 on the grass at Breeders' Cup races in California. The last 53 runs. Does that mean a single thing to you?
Absolutely.
Okay. What does it mean?
You don't believe anything that happens at Kentucky Downs.
Okay.
It is a completely different ball game. A tight turf course at Del Mar, firm turf course at Del Mar, whatever the heck you have at Kentucky Downs with weed growing fields, 8-mile races, 400 turns, undulating peaks and valleys. Not to be rude, you rarely see a good horse win at Kentucky Downs. You see a lot of bad horses give big performances, and they're bet against. I love Kentucky Downs. The people love Kentucky Downs. Great for the horsemen. Great if you can pick winners over that track because you've got 13 horse fields. You've got your dime break. You got your nickel breakage. But penny breakage. But boy, oh boy, it's hard to trust anything that happens there. It's like when I'm handicapping Laurel and I see horses coming out of Timonium. They're running under the Ferris wheel. They've got all kinds of cotton candy all over them. I don't touch them with a 10-foot pole if they run big, and I don't care if they run bad. I want horses. You know who's going to win a Breeders' Cup race one of these days in California? A horse that runs lousy at Kentucky Downs and is completely overlooked, but has good form everywhere else on conventional turf courses.
His name is Dan Illman. He does not speak for the Horse Racing Happy Hour, of course. But there you go. I'm kidding, of course. A horse who is good and did run well at Kentucky Downs is named Cogburn. And so we're going to watch the replay of Cogburn winning the Ainsworth Turf Sprint, the 6 furlong, very short, quick turn into that left turn there at Kentucky Downs. Zach, go ahead and hit that replay for us here on the Horse Racing Happy Hour.
They make their way toward the top of the stretch. It is Cogburn who will turn for home in front. Cogburn, the leader at the top of the lane here. Charcoal sneaks through on the inside. And right up there, too, is No Balls, who comes up alongside of them. It is Cogburn to catch, 3/16 to go. No Balls on the outside, moves up into second. Charcoal is down toward the inside, but Cogburn is opened up. Cogburn is opened up by 3. Then No Balls in second, one-timer, and Charcoal on the inside. No doubt about it. It is Cogburn. Cogburn scores.
Probably the best.
A quick ask.
Yes.
Do they mow that lawn, or do they just have goats out there eating it?
It's a little bit of both. How about that? Yeah, no, it's a fair question. All right, so Cogburn, though, one of those horses, Dan, we saw really great at Saratoga. Best turf sprinter since whom, as far as the last like 3-4 races? It's not been too long, probably, but the numbers are incredible, frankly.
The numbers are incredible when you got the world record at Saratoga, right? 5.5 furlongs in sub a minute. I mean, that was an unbelievable performance. And again, he was able to overcome Kentucky Downs. He ate up the lawn. He just showed off that amazing early speed, and he kept on going. It is worth noting that the one loss he ever had was at Kentucky Downs on turf. But still, I actually was rooting for him a little bit to lose, not because I hate Cogburn. I love Cogburn as a horse, but because I want value in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint.
Of course.
If he came into this race off a bad third, you'd be like, a bad third at Kentucky Downs means nothing to me. But he's a deserving favor in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. I'm sure Asmussen's got to tighten the screws now because you got to turn him back to 5 at Del Mar. He's got that speed. Now he's going to be facing some Southern California speed, but boy, is he good.
He is very, very good. Do you worry at all about that transition? Obviously, we're going to get the Euro shippers. We're going to see that. We got, for the first time, it was either at Keeneland or last year, where one of those 2-year-old Euros took the left turn and actually won the race. I think they finished top 3, in fact. In the outside of the Euro shippers, you think he'll take to California okay?
I think he'll take to California just fine. He's a professional horse. He's been around a long time. He's been good on dirt. He's been good on turf. He's displayed the versatility to win from on or off the lead. I think he will be close to the pace. I think you always worry about distances in sprint. Distance changes. Even 6 to 5 is a big change. 7 to 5, as you see in New York. New York with the Keeneland when they go to 7 to 5.5 sometimes. But with him, I'm not worried about it. He's just very, very versatile. As for the European turf sprinters, I'm always leery because many of those horses are often slow from the gate. And if you break a step slow, a half step slow in a North American 5/8 of a mile turf race with a big field of horses that all of a sudden you have to navigate your way around, it's real tough to do, especially for a baby.
We saw that last year, Gerardo Corrales guiding the aforementioned no balls. Do you think Larry Colmus was saying his name a little longer for effect in that race, just a little bit?
He's a fun horse, isn't he? Except for, if you think about it, I mean, you never want to be that horse. But at the end of the day, I think he's a sneaky horse in the Breeders' Cup because I have a feeling that Larry Ravelli might have gotten a little bit of a late start with this horse this year. So he just decided to work backwards right away from the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint. He's now had 2 preps, one off the layoff he likely needed. Here was a great fitness builder. Again, he didn't run great, but it was Kentucky Downs, and he ran into a monster who was really primed and ready to go. Something tells me we're going to see the real no balls at Del Mar.
I think you're totally right about that. Let's move on. We have you on because the first Kentucky Derby prep is this Saturday here at Churchill Downs. The Iroquois, obviously, a 10-point prep. Pocahontas the same day, folks, for the Kentucky Oaks. Same point system for them. Some changes this year, Dan, to the road to the Kentucky Derby, both in where they're racing and in which races will count. So, Zach, if you can go ahead and pull that graphic up for us so that we can see sort of the changes and kind of show everybody what's going on as far as those changes. But what stands out immediately, of course, Dan, is they're adding the Virginia Derby. This is not so stunning. I wish they would have, by the way, instead of changing the name, the Virginia Derby, just completely to the dirt, keep the Virginia Derby on grass and call this like the Richmond Derby or something. I don't know. Am I being pedantic here? Of course I'm being pedantic. What are we doing?
Yeah, I think you are, actually. The Derby point situation is always very tough. I mean, again, it's exciting that we're talking about the Derby right now, but isn't it kind of silly? I mean, the Iroquois is going to offer 10 points. We don't even know who the 2-year-old champion yet. We don't even know who the Breeders' Cup Juvenile winner is, and these horses are getting 10 points. I don't know. I think the Virginia Derby, it's very nice. It's 7 weeks out. It'll be interesting to see how it affects the fields in some of the other more established races. And at Colonial Downs, I mean, that track is still a little bit untested on dirt. I have no idea how that's going to work out, huh?
It will be very interesting because that place is set up for turf racing. You're totally right about that. 7 weeks prior to the Derby. You think that's on purpose? Maybe, train up to the Derby from there, or if it doesn't go well, you can jump into another prep 3 weeks later?
I think that's the right move because horsemen do have the choice. Nowadays, I think that horsemen want to give more and more and more time. How many times do we see like horsemen, they get the big points at Tampa Bay Downs and then they just decide, I'm going to train up to the race just to get in. Hey, if you want to get in and have a mint julep, that's great. I'm not sure your horse is going to be well prepared. But there are so many trainers nowadays that are afraid of a bounce or bringing a horse back too quickly. 7 weeks is going to fit the mold for trainers that love to give time, and for a horse that seems to be getting better. If they run very well in the Virginia Derby, plenty of time to run back. So I do like the timing of the race. I like the timing if it's a prep to the Derby. I hate horses coming off long layoffs in the Derby.
Yeah, right. You could lead into the Lexington or something, I guess, too, if you wanted a smaller prep as the final race prior to the Derby there 3 weeks before at Keeneland, of course. They've combined the Euro and the UAE routes, Dan, and I actually really applaud this route, this move, because I think there needs to be more of a concentration in American dirt racing, especially on bringing more Japanese horses over. I think that should be something that we really are pushing, but we're also seeing, because of frankly, the stunningly good results from Japanese traders, owners, etc. They are going to the Arabian Peninsula to get over here as well. So keeping the UAE Derby as a 100-point race, that makes sense to me as well.
Yeah, a lot of the Japanese horsemen are going to want to go there, and they're also going to use the Saudi Derby as a prep to the UAE Derby, as Forever Young did. Now, of course, they do have the Japan, or they had the Japan Road to the Triple Crown. Forever Young just bypassed that. He was too good for it. He decided he wanted the big money in Saudi and the big money in the UAE Derby. So the UAE Derby, listen, it is never a great betting race, it seems. There's always this 1-to-5 shot that dominates, and then you've got 6 stragglers. But if you can attract a couple or 3 Japanese horses, great. I'm still waiting for the horse to come out of the turf prep in Europe to actually do something. To me, it just isn't going to happen.
I don't understand that part of it at all, but hey, I get the idea of making this a global race. I just think you can concentrate on 2 or 3 spots overseas and really get a really good runner, frankly, on the first Saturday in May. And those races with smaller fields are going to be penalized, Dan. And I think we know where the shot across the bow is especially aimed, but a 5-horse field, if people don't know. And this is, by the way, what's carded, I've been told. It's not, if they get to the gate and it's 8-horse field and 3 of them run through the gate or something, they're not going to do that. But 75% of the points in a 5-horse field and down to 50% for 4 or fewer horses, Dan. This won't affect, say, like a Wood Memorial or something like that in New York, but it's probably at least on the radar of the folks running in the Santa Anita Derby.
I think anybody in Southern California is going to be terrified. Now Baffert might just, but here's the problem with this. And again, this is the Baffert penalty, because what we have, the sham 5-horse Baffert field, 4-horse Baffert field, or something like that. Here, are you just going to now have a trainer maybe that has 1 or 2 or 3, we won't mention any names, good 3-year-olds, afraid that they're going to scare them off, and now all of a sudden you're going to enter 6 no-hopers, 6 maidens that can't run, or 3, and all of a sudden the race is watered down. I don't know. Southern California is always a problem because it's an island unto itself. You don't see horsemen with good 3-year-olds on the East Coast, Midwest ship out to Southern California.
Right.
That's a major problem. I think we need an incentive to get trainers to go out to Southern California. And I'm not exactly sure what that is. Maybe more points with more horses.
Maybe indeed, but I thought we would have to talk about that for sure. All right, so we are dragging Dan into our first ever blind ranking segment, and this is essentially how it works. We're going to have Dan rank 5 horses that have won the Kentucky Derby in the last 10 years. Okay. He does not know who is coming next. Okay. And so 1 is the best, 5 is the worst, Dan. And we will start with this past year's winner in Mystic Dan. Where would you rank him, you think, amongst, without knowing who's coming next?
See, I love this game already because I have a feeling I know who's coming. See, I tempted to say 5, but I have a feeling I know who's coming. 4. Mystic Dan, 4.
Mystic Dan at 4.
Yes.
Your next horse, I think I'm going to surprise you with this one, is Nyquist.
Ooh, he was a very good horse, Nyquist.
I gotta say this. When Nyquist won the Derby here, and that room was full of people booking for Belmont. I will say that. That was, that was one of those moments, but I'll let you go here.
Nyquist, a super racehorse, has really become an excellent stallion. I'm going to put him, let me put him at 3.
Okay. All right, so Nyquist.
Tempted, yeah.
Yeah, Nyquist at 3, of course, named after the Detroit Red Wing. How about that? Your next one is a horse named American Pharaoh.
1.
All right, so American Pharaoh gets the 1. We'll see if Zach knows how to spell Pharaoh and American Pharaoh. A very important thing here. Oh, look at that. How about that?
Well, actually, he doesn't. He spelled it the wrong way by accident.
Look, just random needless shrapnel being caught by one producer, Zach. In this case, September Derby winner authentic.
This is a tough one because, again, I have a feeling you're saving the best for last. I'm going to have authentic too.
Okay. All
Now,
right.
if you put Justify out here, I'm going to be very angry.
So, Dan, where would you rank Justify?
I was expecting
Country House
21
or Rich Strike. Yeah, right. I know. Yeah.
Rich Strike. But wow. All right. So this is a massive failure, by the way. But a lot of fun.
Good.
No,
All right. So we've got the list. This is the blind list.
Yes.
Dan, I'm going to afford you the opportunity. Go ahead and re-rank these.
Okay. American Pharaoh, Justify, Nyquist, Authentic, Mystic Dan.
I think I agree with you. Yeah. Don't change that. No. He's stuck with this. Don't you dare do that.
And let me
He's
tell you
stuck with the blind. Yeah. You like it, don't you, Dan? You like that segment, don't you?
Well, again, that's the problem when you out-handicap yourself. You outthink yourself right there. So it's either going to be Justify or Rich Strike.
Yeah, I think I did a good job there. All right. So there you go.
Dan, this is going on our Twitter, just so you know.
Dan knows. It's all right. He knows his job. On this show, he also knows that we're presented by our friends over at Manscaped. Manscaped.com. Promo code Horse Racing, 20% off. A note I've been getting, and I think it's very cool. Oh, you can see a spire. How about that? Let's see. There's a second spire. How about that? That's great. Is that people are actually getting the face products with the foil razors for their teenagers for their first experience with shaving. So in case you don't want to get a razor for your kid, something like that, go check it out. Get the foil. You got a teenager, maybe a preteen. I wasn't one of those guys. Didn't have to shave till I was like 17. But if you are one of those people, maybe you can help your kid out that way. Teach
Me
them how to
either.
shave
I
in the
never
safest
shaved,
way
Louie.
possible.
Never.
That's all. You never shaved. That's right. Never lost. Manscaped.com, promo code Horse Racing, get 20% off. Free shipping to your house as well. As part of that, I was alerted, Dan, that one of my neighbors had bought it for her son, and I was like, that's actually a legitimately great idea, and I'm going to bring that up on the show. So there you go. All right, so 2-year-olds in handicapping.
Yeah.
Obviously, Pocahontas this weekend, Iroquois this weekend, tons of maiden races going on right now. Dan, tell people about your book, because it is, as we found on Amazon, still available. But is it still relevant? Is it still relevant?
In some ways, it's still relevant. I mean, I have a lot of sires that some of them have died by now.
Sure.
Obviously, like that rankings of sires and trainers, etc. But I think some of the angles are still relevant. It needs to be updated. But I think when we talk about handicapping maiden races, let's talk about 2-year-old maiden races overall. Everyone falls for the first-time starter. I don't know whether it's all we want to find the next star. We want to be smarter than anybody else.
Right.
Play experienced horses most of the time. They have a tremendous edge over first-time starters. You look at some of the trainers, and I pulled up some data over the last few years, some of the greatest trainers in the world. Steve Asmussen's ROI with first-time starters this year, $1.29, 2023, $1.40. Chad Brown, 146, 143. Doug O'Neill, 137, 117. You're getting killed if you're just blindly playing the super trainers with first-time starters. They give up so much experience to the horses that have already raced. They're unknown commodities, or at least you have something on form with the horses that have already run. So that would be one of the first steps. Play experienced horses. And don't get fooled too much by buyer speed figures or any kind of metric. These horses are growing. They are maturing. Sometimes, as you'll see in some of these races coming up, big buyer speed figures aided by pace, aided by the way the race was run. Now it's going to be a completely different situation. You got to project the number for these horses, not go blindly off what we have. Whether it's a big number, those horses often regret. And the horses with middling to competitive numbers can improve. Watch trips as well. Horses that might have won a pace duel, lost a race war, they might get a better situation. Watch horses that finish well in their debut, especially for trainers that don't do very well and gallop out well after the race. It's usually a sign that the trainer was giving them one and they're going to move forward next time out. Every trainer, every circuit's going to have a trainer that does win. A guy like Larry Ravelli, he's 22 for his last 78. His ROI is unbelievable. A guy like Dwayne Wright at Emerald Downs is very, very good. DRF Formulator is exceptional because they're able to give you these statistics, percentages for stallions, and also, of course, percentages for trainers. But, experienced horses work for me. Sires, if you want to look for sires right now that do very, very well, if you're going to play a first-time starter, they have to have three things. They have to have a trainer that likes to win with first-time starters and does very well. You have to have a pedigree. The female family is obviously important. But here's just a list of horses that win 18% or more, which is my benchmark for saying they're an above-average debut stallion. Gun Runner, Twirling Candy, Violence, Gervin, Not This Time, Omaha Beach. Just 6 names off the top of my head that I put down, and I realized these are sires that I keep an eye on. And I think the most important thing is something that you're going to have to really work at, and those are workouts. Nowadays, we have the workout report where we're able to check out at Saratoga and Del Mar, see how these horses are working. I like to see who they're working with. A lot of times, trainers are going to work horses with similar ability together to give them both a good stiff workout in the morning. I remember back in the old days, before we had workout reports, all we had was the old tab in the racing form. And I remember Medaglia d'Oro was one of my favorite horses in the country. He was the best 3-year-old in the country, perhaps at the time. And every week I'd look at the work tab and I'd see Medaglia d'Oro, 59.8, Bullet. And maybe same tab, Empire Maker, 59.8. And I'd say, I don't know who Empire Maker is. 7 days later, Medaglia d'Oro, 7 furlongs, 124. Empire Maker, 7 furlongs, 124. Well, obviously these horses are working together. Empire Maker was an unraced 2-year-old that was working with the best 3-year-old in the country. It's no surprise that he came out and was an exceptional racehorse in his own right.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. It's interesting, too, because I think intuitively, Dan, we would assume a sire like a Gun Runner or something, it would take his progeny a little bit longer to develop because we saw his best racing as an older horse, right? And so sometimes it's counterintuitive, like a Nyquist you mentioned. His horses do well on turf, too, right? Or a Justify doing well on turf, even if we didn't see them run on turf.
Well, that's the remarkable thing with the Justifies. Even American Pharaoh. You can make the argument, when you think American Pharaoh, you think turf sire. Now, the Justifies, I think, can run on anything, but they started out amazing on turf, and they just can do it. Whether it's a hidden nugget gene in the pedigree of Justify that allows this to happen, who knows? But you never really do know. It's a good point about the Gun Runners, in that they do seem to be at least early right now, and they continue on.
Let's go ahead and look at those 2 stakes races for 2-year-olds on the weekend. Of course, you can find the DRF at drf.com. Dan, how about this? If you use promo code Louie, you get 10% off your purchase. How about that? LOUIE. Use your promo code. Get in there. 10% off any of your stuff there over at drf.com. A bunch of stakes on the card as well. I'll talk about that after we kick Dan to the curb here. But the Pocahontas is race 8. He mentioned it. It's out of that mile shoot. Dan, we do shows together if people are finding us for the first time tonight ahead of the Preakness. And one of the things I really like about how Maryland runs their circuit is they start the 2-year-olds at 6, then they go to 7 furlongs, 6/8 of a mile, 7/8 of a mile. Then they get to that mile shoot at Laurel, and then eventually the 2-turner, that kind of thing. I like that they're running out of the mile shoot for these races. Do you agree?
I like it as well. I think it's a good test of stamina. And again, as we talked about in the Open, it's kind of going to weed out the sprinters from the routers at this point. The precocious horses that won at 4.5 and 5.5 now are really going to be tested against horses maybe that won at 6.5 and 7. You could argue those horses have a tremendous advantage going the 1-turn mile because, as you said, that progression is just natural buildup of stamina.
The Pocahontas is race 8 on Saturday. We'll be in our usual spot, by the way. If people want to pop by in 320, we'll be sitting up there watching the races this weekend. Pop on by. As always, I'll have a cigar for you. 1 mile on the dirt course here. Everything on the dirt this September here at Churchill Downs. A grade 3, 300K in the kitty here. And some names that I think are really interesting coming into this race. We've got Stilettos coming out of 2 back-to-back races with sort of an hard to handicap coming out of Lone Star, goes to Ellis, wins her follow-up there in the debutante. I think there are some longer shots in here. Liam in the Dust, for example, the 14 in this race, I think is really interesting at 15-1 for Louis Saez. Where did Dan land in this race?
Well, I'm interested in the 13 Kimchi Cat a little bit. I'm a little concerned that he won the Bolton Landing in an off-turf race. He was entered main track only that day, so a lot of things worked to his advantage. But what I liked about Kimchi Cat, she's not the biggest horse in the world, but she was able to sit and track the pace 3 wide. She sort of just cruised up to the leaders turning for home. She did it on her own. She's a very professional sort. Tyler fits her to a T to aboard her. And I think from this post position, which I'm not sure is going to be too easy. Post 13, doing a 1-turn mile. I think she's fast enough to get position without losing too much ground. And thus, if she's pulling a 3-wide stalking trip or so while clear of the kickback, which sometimes affects these young horses, I think she's going to give a good account of herself. But as you said, there are so many horses in this race that make sense. I'm curious as to your thoughts on the horse with the big fig, and that is the 3 Lacara, who won last time out in gate-to-wire fashion. Mark Casse was winning with everything in the world. She earned an 84 buyer. Folks are going to gravitate to that. I thought she couldn't have had an easier trip in that race if they tried or drew it out on paper. She got as loose as she wanted to be. I don't know who she beat, and I just can't see her pulling that trip in a field with other speeds. Maybe she proves me wrong, but at a short price, I'm kind of fading her.
What do you think her price will be at post time? You're talking about is 5-1 a short price in this field for you?
I kind of think so. She's 9-2 in that maiden race last time out. And again, she's got the fig last time out. And if she builds on it, she wins. But I don't think there is any guarantee she's going to build on it. Or in her second race at Churchill Downs, she earned a big buyer speed figure. She shows up as the favorite at Saratoga, and Kimchi Cat handles her. I just think the big figure last time was because she was able to feel good with that kind of trip. You get out to the lead and face no pressure. It's a lot different situation than going out to the lead and facing 2-3 other fast horses.
You mentioned Kimchi Cat. I'm actually interested in this because when we were just talking before we actually got to the race, you had mentioned, hey, a horse with experience at 7 furlongs, right? Which Lacara has in this case. Kimchi Cat doesn't. That horse has never gone farther than 5.5 furlongs. Why do you think you're leaning on a Kimchi Cat at 9-2 rather than a horse that won at 7 furlongs?
I kind of think, and even though Lacara did win at 7 furlongs, I think the trip is what turns me off. If Kimchi Cat only had 1 start, or maybe 2 starts, I'd be a little bit concerned. But she has 3 races between 5 and 5.5. So I think she's at least built up the requisite stamina from those 3 starts to get her ready to go a 1-turn mile. So I'm going to give her a little bit of a chance. Again, watching her at Saratoga, she's not the biggest filly in the world, and that worries me. I want a horse with a little bit of scope as they stretch out in distance, but I do trust her tactical speed. I do trust Tom Amoss. We have to talk about some of the others in here, though. What about Pretty Sure? Brendan Walsh, here's an improbable filly who wins first time out. The Dams was second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Obviously, this horse has pedigree. Perhaps the most interesting thing is that she's not Joel Rosario's first call. If there's a scratch, Claire's Charm, a maiden, gets into the race. That's where Joel will land. And listen, Claire's Charm, we talked about Workouts and Company. Before her debut, she was working in company with Jonathan's Way, who we're going to talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, she also has been working at Churchill and seems to really enjoy the track as well. So that matters to me at least. Did you see in your mind between Ellis and Saratoga where the better 2-year-old races were this year?
I think they were at Saratoga, but let me tell you, Ellis is one of the more underrated 2-year-old programs. It keeps getting better year after year after year. The purses are there, and it seems every year we get 1 or 2 good ones. And I have a feeling that Stilettos, although she didn't win a maiden race, she won a stake, proved that she was the real deal. She looked good winning at Lone Star. She certainly looked good. She did have to prove it at Ellis. She did it at 7, and she did it by setting a fast pace. Look at those fractions. She went sub 23 in the second quarter, sub 22 in the first quarter. She's battling for the lead. She's able to shrug off those horses and beat 2 next out winners, and she's bred as well. Her dam was second in the Grade 1 La Brea. She's fast. Will she be able to handle other pace heat? I'm not sure. This is the kind of race. Handicap the race and make your own odds line. And then play the overlays, because you can make a case for 6 or 7 horses in this race. They're still unexposed. They're still inexperienced. They're still improving.
Yeah, I mentioned the 14 Liam in the Dust. I really like her here. I think that debut at 7 furlongs. I think I like on debut, Dan, if a horse is willing, like she did at Ellis, to get into a battle with another horse and just be willing to go forward, not be a pack animal on debut. And I was pretty impressed with her first run there because she was right there neck and neck with a couple of fillies going in, frankly, into the turn. She gets into the stretch. She pulls away. 15-1 kind of price. Certainly, going to include her in a longer ticket, a pick 4, pick 5 kind of ticket. But I think even for purposes of an across the board kind of bet, I think she's really interesting.
Well, she won that debut at 7. It's never easy. That's to me is almost like a route for 2-year-olds early in the
Yeah,
year.
right.
We win at 4.5 at 5 furlongs, and the fact that she was able to overcome the pace pressure going 7 and then cruise on home. She won that race in the manner of a workout. She was no surprise. Everyone at the track knew she was going to win. She was bet down to what, even money that day.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned about post 14. Like, what sort of
Sure.
trip are we going to pull from Liam in the dust? Is Louie Saez, who's a very aggressive jockey, just going to quarter horse her out of there and try to get to the front with some of the fast horses? Is he going to take a chance being hung out wide all the way around the track? The post is worrisome. But if this horse runs well, all of a sudden you circle her for the future because Rudy Brissett does a very good job.
Yeah, that would be one to watch for sure. A couple races later will be the Iroquois. 10th race, 1 mile dirt course, 300K in the kitty for the grade 3. This is 10 points, the first prep for the Kentucky Derby. Fun fact, Dan, last year's winner, West Saratoga, did actually make it to the Kentucky Derby starting gate. I think, honestly, if we look back at last year's Derby trail, what Larry Demerit did to get that horse all the way through the year and actually qualify is one of the better trading jobs we saw.
Absolutely. And you know something, he ran his horse, which is what is always nice to see. You run your horse and you earn your way into the Kentucky Derby, and that's exactly what happened. And he wasn't as good as those other 3-year-olds on the first Saturday in May, but absolutely tip of the hat to the connections there because they showed a lot of sportsmanship. They ran the horse, they made money with the horse, and
Yes.
they got to the ultimate goal, which is to get into the starting gate in the Derby when you're a small connection.
We will try to find the next of those horses, a horse that's coming in. Dan, I tweeted this today because I never thought this would happen. I haven't been doing this very long, but I never thought this would happen. We have a buzz horse for the Iroquois. I reject this, by the way, but it is Owen Almighty. There's a lot of talk about this horse, but frankly, also a lot to like about him as well.
No doubt about it. Both races up close on the pace and just keeps on rolling, winning by open lengths, winning at Ellis Park, going 7. There's the progression we talk about, 5.5 to 7, bred to certainly go long. The dam was graded stakes placed, going a route of ground on the dirt. This is a horse that's going to get the acid test from a pace standpoint. Has been sort of been facing fair paces in both of his races. The pace is going to be fast in the Iroquois, but it's hard to knock a horse like Owen Almighty. But as you said, there's a lot of buzz around this horse. IRAD on means he's, of course, going to take even more money. So demand value, because while he's a logical contender, and no one will be surprised if he wins, it's not like he's this super standout cinch.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of others in here that are especially interesting. We have a horse that's already 2 for 2 lifetime at Churchill on the outside in Politically Correct. The 12 horse here ran in that juvenile behind Owen Almighty by over 4 lengths. How should someone handicap that aspect, Dan, where you've got a horse that's returning to a track where he's had success, but he's going against a horse that he just lost to?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to analyze how the horse achieved the success. And in Politically Correct's case, I think he was a little bit dressed up going into that Ellis Park juvenile. In the debut, just watching the races at Churchill Downs that day, speed was absolutely king. Politically Correct got to the lead, what I thought was a speed-biased track, and was able to win. They ran him in the Bashford Manor, and that was a race. If you ever see a pace meltdown race, it was the Bashford Manor, where the pace was ridiculously hot. And to Politically Correct's credit, he fell far behind and was last, but that's where you wanted to be when the pace melted down and he was able to get up and win. I wonder if he was tested and found wanting in the juvenile. I'm not willing to write him off. Obviously not. He's shown ability to win from on the lead and off the pace, a sign of professionalism for a 2-year-old. I just thought Owen Almighty was better than he was at Ellis Park.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. Another horse in here that I saw on debut up near you at Saratoga is Jonathan's Way, the 10. This is a horse with only 1 race under his belt at 6 furlongs. He's got to go 8 here, Dan. What's the best way to look at this? Is it breeding to know if he's going to be able to get the 8? What's sort of the litmus test for you here?
It's one way to look at it, and I think if you look at the pedigree, you might be a little bit concerned that it's speed. I mean, Vacoma's just been a super first crop sire. They've been winning with everything, and he was a sprinter that could go a mile, a one-turn mile certainly. But the dam was very early, a stakes-winning dirt sprinter as a 2-year-old. But when you watch Jonathan's Way's debut, there's no doubting this horse's talent. First of all, when you're Phil Bauer and you send out a first-time starter at Saratoga at 2-1, that's what's known as steam. Someone knew that this horse could run a little bit. He didn't break well at all. He swept up on the outside, and he kept on going. It was the sign of a horse that has an immense amount of talent. He did get a figure for that race as well. How will he break? That's the key in this race. A lot of times we see second-time starters, once that experience is in their head, they know what they're doing, they break better, and that would be a boon for Jonathan's Way. If he breaks slowly, he could be in trouble. Something tells me, though, this horse might be the goods, at least around one turn.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I think we forget, because this is technically a Derby prep, we forget that once in a while trainers are just trying the 8 furlongs because it's a one-turner, right? And they see a big check and it's something that they can go after. What do you think of First Resort? This is a horse that ran last in the Saratoga Special, ran out of steam at 6.5. Is there a way for a horse to rebound after that kind of performance, Dan, or do you think this is one that might be better off sticking at 6?
No, absolutely. This horse can rebound. I don't see any reason why not. A very versatile pedigree that it should at least get a mile. The Dam was a grade 1 stakes winner on the dirt. I think she won the La Brea at 7. Uncle Mo, of course, the stallion can do just about anything. First Resort was being tested in the Saratoga Special and got caught up in a speed duel and ran pretty well to be second behind a very underrated Todd Pletcher 2-year-old, a professional runner named Showcase. You could argue that if Showcase is in this race, he's a big favorite. And First Resort gave that horse all he could handle till about the 8th pole and did a lot of dirty work. From the rail, Bejarano's going to have to really rush this horse, and I'm concerned about what sort of trip he's going to pull, but I don't want to give up on him just yet.
Yeah, Rafa did win this race last year aboard West Saratoga, so he's done just that at long odds as well. I think I have to ask you about Sandman coming in. This is another Mark Casse, or Magnitude coming in for Steve Asmussen. Broke his maiden at Ellis Park under Bug Boy, Eric Asmussen, if you will. So either of those stand out to you?
I have to be honest. I think both have talent. I think they still have a lot to prove to me. Magnitude just got away, in my opinion, with the easiest of paces, second time out at Ellis Park, and that's a Steve Asmussen MO in maiden races. Bet him second time out. He wins first time out, but I often, if they don't perform first time out, you will see an improved performance, and that's what we got for Magnitude, who walked the dog on the lead, and he's just going to be facing a much tougher pace scenario. As for Sandman, he really ran in his second lifetime start for Casse, but he just got a perfect trip. He got great position down towards the inside. The rail opened up. He shot on through. He never had a stone in his path. He's a very well-bred horse by the super stallion Tappan, a half-brother to a stakes horse named She Can't Sing, who is a graded stakes winner. Sandman, I think, has a lot of maybe future potential in this race. I don't want to play horses off perfect trips at short prices. I'm curious to your thoughts on 2 long shots real quick.
Okay. Yep.
Massaro. We talk about training. Dale Roman doesn't win first time out. He had Massaro ready to go. The horse got bet. A sweeping move from off the pace to win. Flattered when 2 next out horses returned to win. And the horse is bred. He's by Not This Time, a great first-time starter, a sire, but also has turf and distance in the pedigree, being a half to Bleecker Street, who was a very good turf horse back in the day. That horse is very interesting, especially if there's a pace meltdown. And Dale knows how to place these maiden winners.
Yeah, I think one of the calling cards for him before 5 years ago were these 2-year-old races. I always looked for him in the fall, especially Churchill Downs, right? And so I think I see a bit of a little return to form, if you will, for Dale Romans as he gets into whatever phase this is in his training career. I talked to him last week. He's high on Massaro. He is. He thinks this is a really talented horse. Here's the thing. It was a muddy day that day at Ellis Park. It wasn't good. It was muddy. It was legitimately muddy. I don't know how he's going to take to the dirt here, but frankly, they've been working him here, so I'm not worried about that part. 15-1 is a very nice price for the reason that you mentioned, which was on debut, he was willing to do that work from the back of the field to pass some horses. There's a ton of early speed in this field. He could be one of those horses like West Saratoga last year, just to pick up the pieces.
And a similar situation perhaps with the 9 Firmus, trained by a very good horse, Wayne Catalano. And when you look at this pedigree, he's a son of Curlin, winning his debut at 3/4 of a mile. His dam was a multiple grade 2 stakes winner. This is another horse that showed the professionalism and the maturity to rally from off of the pace. So again, you may look at the buyer speed figure and say, 69. 69 is not a bad buyer speed figure for a 2-year-old in what? August? These horses are improving by leaps and bounds. And if you believe the Curlins want to go longer, maybe Firmus is a horse from the back of the pack to at least make the bottom of your single race exotics. But as I like to say in these sort of races, you can make a case for 5 or 6. Make your own fair odds line and then play your overlays.
Dale Romans did win this race, was sitting on Go in 2020, and Dennis's Moment. What a name. Oh, man. Dennis's Moment in 2019.
He was the bee's knees, man. Everybody loved Dennis's Moment. The wheels came off, but for the first start or two, he was something.
Another horse just like that is running this weekend at Churchill Downs in Hoosier Philly as a 2-year-old. She couldn't miss, man. Oh my God. I got crushed. I got crushed for liking her. I don't like that I got crushed for that.
I don't think you were wrong for liking her, because when you saw her win, she was super impressive. When the talk started to get of, she's not just an Oaks filly, she's a Derby filly at the end of the year. Maybe that was being overblown and we just put a little bit too much pressure on Hoosier Philly. But she, listen, as a 2-year-old was super.
You mentioned a little bit too much pressure on a filly. Do you like Torpedo Anna going to the Cotillion instead of the Pennsylvania Derby?
Yes.
Okay,
I
do
think
too.
she took her shot in the Travers. She proved she's just as good as those horses.
Yeah.
Kenny realizes now everything is so muddled, isn't it? The older male division is so muddled. The 3-year-olds, they're getting better. They're good, but you could argue she's, if not the best, the second best with Fierces.
Sure.
I mean, they're noses apart, and that's where they are in the rankings. She wins the Cotillion. She beats Idiomatic and Adair Manor and Randomized and Raging Sea in the Breeders' Cup Distaff. And there's even a hint of chaos. She's Horse of the Year.
I'm with you. There you go. Well, he's Dan Illman at DRF_. Dan Illman, tell all the people where your much better produced videos are.
Oh, our much better produced videos are at the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Head on over there. We've got stakes previews from some of DRF's best handicappers and me. And you can also find my stakes previews and recaps for the Mid-Atlantic area at drf.com.
Dan's Dan, Louie, use that promo code Louie. Dan's dad's favorite handicapper Mike Beer available on that website. So there you go.
My father wishes Mike Beer was his son.
There it is. We all kind of do. All right. Well, get him out of here. Thank you, Dan. We appreciate it. All right. There you go. Dan Illman with us from the DRF. I'm Louie Robo. This is the Horse Racing Happy Hour. We're out here live at Churchill Downs. Thursday night racing. We got one more left in about 10 minutes. So I'm going to get going on a last couple of races out there on Saturday. Again, I'll be out here if you want to come hang out in section 320. You're welcome to do that. Dan talked you through races 8 and 10. I'm going to do 7 and 9 now. The Locust Grove is the beginning of that late pick 5. It's a mile and a 16th race. Grade 2 on the dirt, $400,000 in the kitty here. This is for fillies and mares 3 and up. Horses in here that people will know for sure. The favorite's going to be almost certainly in this case. I say that. Shotgun Hottie's almost certainly going to be the favorite in this race. Coming in only 1 win in 6 runs this year. I think she's going to be a worthy favorite, though. Coming out of the 7 hole for Jorge Ortiz. She did win the Allaire DuPont over Preak this weekend. It's kind of started her on a nice chain of good races all in a row. In that grade 2 fleur-de-lis here at Churchill Downs, finishing second by a neck to Scylla, who they tried later in grade 1 company out on the West Coast as well. So I think she's going to be a worthy favorite in here for sure. Behind her, I have Tax, the 3 horse. I'm a little chalky here, but 9-2 for Brian Hernandez Jr. and trainer Randy Morse. This horse, last 3 times out in the Groupie Doll at a mile at Ellis Park, frankly felt like they didn't quite know what to do. Pagile, who's also in this race, picks up the pieces, wins that race by a neck over Fancy. I am interested to see her get back to Churchill Downs, where she has won 2 of her 5 lifetime starts. She'll get back to this distance, which she's never won at, which is really interesting. She was a really good third, though, in that fleur-de-lis. I think she's at least going to be part of the equation at the end of the race. Would not be surprised if we ended with a 7-3 type exacta. Loved is in here. I mentioned Pagal as well. She's 2 for 4. Pagal is at 8-1 here for the Axeman Luan Machado. It's 2 seconds as well in 4 races at Churchill Downs lifetime. She hasn't won at the distance, but also, frankly, she hasn't run at the distance too often. She's been running at a mile at different places, one in the slop at a mile here at Churchill, and then after that ran in that kind of mile, 1.5 turn sort of thing at Ellis Park in the Groupie Doll. That was off a layoff from May to August. She's actually second up in her form cycle here. So I think Pagal, the 5 horse here, is actually a really, really interesting entry for trainer Tommy Drury. And I think you'd be crazy to leave Loved out of your handicap. The 4 here, you get Tyler, you get Brendan Walsh, the 2 of them hitting right at about 20% at Churchill Downs together. In graded stakes, not a great run so far this year for trainer Brendan Walsh, but this horse 1 for 1 lifetime at Churchill Downs did win an allowance after her maiden win, first time against winners. Has won at Keeneland, has won at Churchill, has won at Ellis Park as well. Ran in the Molly Pitcher last year, ran in that double dog dare earlier in the year at Keeneland. So has been in good company before. Shouldn't be overwhelmed in this company at all. Race 9 is going to be the Louisville Thoroughbred Society. This is a listed stake, 6 furlongs on the dirt. And of course, it's Churchill Downs, so we're doing $300,000 for a 6 furlong listed stakes here. I ran Ortiz into ride on Saturday. Dan pointed that out. Trust your handicapping on your horses. A guy like Irad's going to attract a lot of money. Go ahead and trust your handicapping, but I will say he's on the best horse in this race and closed the game sugar. Shipped out for the grade 1 Bing Crosby, something we wrote about at the Sporting Tribune. Lost to the Chosen Vron. No shame in losing to the Chosen Vron on the West Coast at 6 furlongs. Ran a 101 buyer that race. Last 3 buyers, 99, 99, 101. Guess where those first 2 were? They were at Churchill Downs. This horse loves this course. This also feels like the kind of race that Irad Ortiz simply doesn't lose. And so look for this horse who ran under Umberto Rispoli on the West Coast to come back here, pick Irad back up, and do exactly what he did in the Kelly's Landing and in the Aristides this year in June to win both. There are other horses in here that are really interesting and I think could be part of the equation at the end. Got to look at my notes. There goes. Skelly's in here, the 10 on the outside. I think that's a must include here. His numbers are out of control good. Ran in the grade 1 Vanderbilt. Last time at Saratoga, ran a good second behind Nakatomi. No one was beating Nakatomi that day. He ran a 109 and change. 6 furlongs at Saratoga. That's going to be pretty tough to beat, and so I'm not going to hold that against him. But after that, I think Necker Island's a really interesting horse here. 5 wins and 16 lifetime starts for this 7-year-old son of Hard Spun. He's still going. He's still running. He's won both of his races this summer, man, and I love that stuff. He goes out to Iowa, wins the sprint over 6 furlongs in a $1.09 and change, just like Skelly, just like Nakatomi at Saratoga. So if he can get back to that kind of form and get back to those numbers that he's run here before, I think he can absolutely be part of the equation at the end of the race as well. And Disco Ball is in here. The 5 longer shot here, I think, could be a problem. Ran really well last time out at Saratoga, backing up a performance at Delaware Park before that. Has to drop off Lasix, I think, for the first time in his career for this 7-year-old gelding. And this is how I know I'm old, Zach. Orb is his dad, and Orb won the Derby, won a Derby that I attended. So a 7-year-old son of Orb is running in this race. Interested to see if he keeps that form going, but he's 4 for 6 this year. He's been running at Santa Anita, Delaware, like I mentioned, last up at Saratoga. So this horse has been on the board at Santa Anita, at Delaware Park, and at Saratoga, winning 4 of those 6 races. We'll be interested to see his debut here at Churchill Downs. And just a quick pick for the last race in case you're looking for a play in the last race. It's a 2-year-old maiden race here. $120,000 here. We are going 2 turns, a mile and a 16th for 2-year-olds. So this might be one to watch for horses that might eventually run in the Kentucky Jockey Club at the end of November here. Homer's Odyssey is going to be in here. I just like that name, but Tickled Quest is where I landed the 5, second timer for Brad Cox. This horse going from the mile at Ellis Park to a mile and a 16th. Obviously, they think this son of Nyquist wants to go the 2 turns. Trainer Brad Cox will certainly have him ready to go on Saturday. I look to the 11 then on the outside in Kinetic Control. This is a second timer for Dale Romans. We talked about his acumen with 2-year-olds here. Corey Lannery gets them out. Ran over 7 furlongs at Ellis Park. Ran really well. Frankly, if that race is probably another half a furlong long, he wins it. And so I'll be interested to watch him, the son of Not This Time, stretch out to the mile and a 16, go in 2 turns here at Churchill. I think he'll like it quite a bit. Seattle Road is in here, the 8 horse at 12-1. Jaime Torres won the Preakness this year. Aboard for Tom Amos. Second-time starter here. This is easily, in my opinion, Tom Amos's best angle is the second-time starter. Wins at 16% with those horses. It is coming in off a little bit of a layoff at the end of July. So that horse coming in, that's a 21% angle. They'll throw the blinkers on. So look for that horse to be on the lead early. And finally in that race, I'd look at So Sandy, the 6. 10-1. Cherie DeVoe, man, she's having a summer, hitting at 15% this year. Was a firster, did nothing at Ellis Park, man. That means almost nothing to me. Second timers for her hit at 18%. Picks up Jose Ortiz in the mount, and all he's done is win a 5th of his races this year. All right, Zach, come on up to the screen. We'll get out of here, but I wanted to thank our friends over at Sporting Tribune, where you can catch me every Saturday. My column this week will be about the Iroquois, the road to the Derby. We'll get into Santa Anita when they start running there again there at Los Al in Southern Cal this weekend. So I want to thank everyone hanging out with us, Vegas, Hawaii, LA, or San Diego, wherever you are watching the show. Zach, did you learn anything today?
I learned that half of the abbreviations Dan uses that I don't understand.
He also favors, the thing I learned today is he favors experience over first timers. Now, don't get stuck on the first timers. I think that's an interesting thing to point out to the audience, and I appreciate that. Do you have the Dolphins or the Bills tonight?
Oh, I am 100% Dolphins.
Okay, all right. Taking the home team tonight. There you go. I think the Bills are going to sneak down there, win by 3. So there you go. All right, well, let's get out of here.
Louie, there are lies and damn lies, and the Bills winning against the Dolphins. Okay.
You can find us at Horse Happy Hour Twitter. You can find me at Radio Louie, and of course at Sporting Trib if you want to find us on the old Sporting Trib as well. Make sure you go follow them. Great supporters of the Horse Racing Happy Hour as well. Manscaped.com, promo code Horse Racing. Get that 20% off free shipping to your house. Zach, we'll be back at it next week. We'll be talking Churchill, but of course, talking Santa Anita opening weekend as well.
All right, let's head out for another edition of the Horse Racing Happy Hour.
Thank you, Dan.